Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. It's 4 o'clock in New York. What's that old expression? That's something to do with lipstick and a pig. Well, keep that top of mind on one of the most consequential afternoons of Donald Trump's second term as president. It might surprise you to hear that. After all, what could be more consequential than accidentally sharing war plans or gutting national security agencies or musing about deporting American citizens? Well, today there is a new candidate for biggest blunder, because in terms of in-your-face indicators, there are precious few of us that can comfortably ignore. What's more noticeable than sudden, perhaps dramatic increases to the prices we pay for everyday goods? That is what's happening today. From Politico, quote, Trump's decision to eliminate a special exemption that allows products from mainland China and Hong Kong under $800 to enter the U.S. tariff-free, part of his trade offensive against Beijing, are hitting the ever-growing market of online shoppers. Quote, starting Friday, Americans will see the cost of the president's 145% tariff on Chinese goods on many packages they order directly from retailers there, some with tariff fees clearly displayed on their invoices. If you're waiting for the pig, there it is, where the White House has made a cottage industry out of spinning, BSing, lying these past few months and weeks. There is not enough lipstick in the world, tariffed or otherwise, to cover up the consequences today's development will have on how people actually live and how much things cost them. According to the New York Times, quote, Stanley Black & Decker said on Wednesday that it raised prices on its tools and outdoor products last month and will raise them again later this year. The German sportswear company Adidas said this week that steeper tariffs would eventually lead to higher prices for U.S. customers. Executives at Procter & Gamble, which makes products like Bounty paper towels and Tide detergent, said last week that the company would most likely increase prices for some products to mitigate the effects of higher tariffs. Officials at Hasbro recently said the toy maker would, quote, have to raise prices, although it would try to minimize the burden on customers. Now, as the American people come to grips with these self-inflicted, man-made, in-your-face indicators, elected Republicans are grappling with a political reckoning that has only just begun, one that could have them out of work come the midterm elections. That development is where we start today with two of our favorite people, two reporters and friends. Anchor and correspondent for Bloomberg News, David Gura, is back with me at the table. Also joining us, MSNBC senior contributing editor Michelle Norris is here. It's so great to see both of you. David Gura, a lot of the focus of the tariffs so far, at least on the show, have been on how the market reacted to them and how the Trump cabinet and officials spun them. There's the Orwellian press secretaries saying they're not a tax increase, while you've got MAGA Republican senators saying tariffs are a tax increase, people like Ted Cruz and others. But the most important part of what was an incompetently rolled out bad piece of policy was always going to be how it affected people, everyday people, small business owners especially. Tell us what's about to happen.
So this is the first moment when consumers are going to come face to face with the fact that these are raising prices on all kinds of goods. And I think that's something we've been told is going to happen. You know, something interesting happened before these tariffs went into place in earnest, and that is we saw a lot of goods move from China and other countries to the U.S. to kind of preempt this as much as they could. So warehouses were filled up with goods that a lot of people here in the United States buy. Now we're seeing Shein and Temu, these Chinese companies, making changes to their fundamental business models. With Temu, you can no longer buy directly from folks in China. It's going to be done through distribution places here in the United States. Shein is, like Amazon proposed doing, we saw reported earlier in the week, going to give consumers an indication of how much prices have gone up as a result of these tariffs being in place. They're really going to have to reckon with that. And I think it lays bare a difficulty this administration has had with empathy. And you are somebody, a practitioner of political communication, an observer of it. It's something this administration really struggles with. So you have Donald Trump in the Oval Office a couple of days ago talking about how you'll only be able to buy $2 versus $30. You've heard him talk about groceries, not groceries. It's this kind of old, funny word. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, was in an interview with CNBC, and he talked about how this is going to affect things that you can't get in the U.S., like mangoes, for instance. They're kind of grasping at things that evince the fact that they're not totally familiar with the way that most people in this country live their lives. And I think that's the moment that we're in right now. there's been a lot of happy talk. There's been a lot of wishful thinking about how this is going to play out, but the rubber's going to hit the road now, and we're going to begin to see what I think a lot of people have feared now for many weeks.
Can you just go through what is going to be more expensive and what will cost more, even if it's not a direct sort of tariff product? Just how small business owners and how big business owners will sort of deal with products and deal with pricing?
I don't want to say that it's everything, because it's not everything, but it's almost everything. Just the way that this economy is structured now, so many products come from overseas, and yes, a lot of them come from China, but they're from other countries as well. And if you just focus on this de minimis exemption, which has disappeared, and that's essentially stuff that's less than $800 that didn't have to go through customs. Bloomberg did an analysis of that, and 4 million products were sent every day in this manner from China to the United States last year. I mean, just a tremendous amount of product. So again, it's not everything, but it's almost everything. And I think that it's not going to happen in some immediate groundswell where groceries that you buy or the products that you buy at the store are going to be immediately expensive, but there's going to be a slow build to that. And what we've seen over these last few weeks is companies beginning to figure out what that adjustment's going to be like, how they're going to pass that on to consumers. And we're talking a lot about kind of the Main Street effects of this now, but we're in this moment when companies are reporting their earnings for the quarter. And I can't emphasize enough how many of them are stressing the fact that there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty about their business model going forward, but also indicating that this is likely to lead to price increases for folks who buy their products.
If you were trying to F up the economy, what would be on that list that Trump hasn't done?
Fire the Fed chair, which he's threatened to do and has sort of walked back. But I think that's an example of something where he could further upset the faith and confidence that people have in the U.S. economy today. And I think that it's something that he perhaps recognizes would be a bridge too far, and that he has walked back from it. I don't think that his distaste or disagreement with the Fed chair has diminished in any sense, but I think he recognizes the fact that with the level of uncertainty and instability that we have right now, removing a principal who is proudly independent, oversees an institution that's been proudly independent for almost a century, would be a bridge too far.
Michelle, I will forever remember your live reports on Election Day. And Election Day, every Election Day is about a lot more than one thing. But one thing that everybody talked about in trying to explain and understand the results was not the price of all things, not the price of things from China, the price of eggs. And Donald Trump and his Trumpian $2 instead of 30 sort of inability to really even pretend to understand how normal people live, called it the grocery. We had an election in this country that turned, in our shorthand of political media, on the price of eggs. Everything that is sort of in the bucket of cost triggers is about to go up, right? I mean, and put eggs aside for a moment, but if you've got a kid that dances, costumes are going to go up, shoes are going to go up, tights are going to go up, makeup's going to go up, hair clips are going to go up. If you've got a kid that plays baseball, the cup's more expensive, the pants are more expensive, the belt's more expensive, the socks are more expensive, the cleats are... Every single thing that you grab for a family is about to cost more in America. And I am so overwhelmingly, I guess, dismayed that the Republicans are going to march over the cliff with Trump 6 months after the American people threw out an entire party over the price of eggs.
And you know, there's someone I check with regularly who runs a diner, and they explained to me that the price of eggs, normally a lot of 15 eggs, would cost $35. It's now up to around $150. So the price of eggs is still high. But I like the examples that you gave at the beginning of this when you were talking about equipment that people use who work with their hands, sports equipment for if your kids are playing sports. If you're shopping at Shein or Temu, maybe those are impulse purposes. You might not need that cute lavender cardigan that you have your eyes on. But, you know, so many other things are going to go up that you do need. Paper products, cleaning products. You know, if you want to go on a picnic, the paper products that you use for that are going to go up. Everything is going to go up. And what they don't understand is that so many Americans live on the margins. Live on the margins. And so if everything is going up by 20%, every single category is going up by 20%. This is pushing people closer and closer to the edge. And we're talking about the consumer goods that are going to be more expensive. You know, we haven't talked about the manufacturing chain. So many of the things that actually are manufactured here in the U.S. require on parts and equipment, gadgets and gadgets that are sourced from overseas. And so when we get into the second and the third quarter, and David certainly knows probably much more about this than I do, but we're going to probably be looking at manufacturing slowdowns. And so that means layoffs. That means people, if they're not laid off, they're not pulling that extra shift. They're just, you know, scaling down their manufacturing. So people are going to start to feel this in all kinds of ways. And on top of all that, then we start to get something called malaise in the economy. And people just don't have the kind of confidence that you would expect with the economy that Donald Trump inherited. And it's worth repeating that. He inherited a very strong economy. And even though people were concerned about the price of eggs and the price of rent and the price of cars and the price of gas and everything else, the fundamentals of the economy were essentially pretty strong. And people don't feel that way right now. And so even if he were to reverse the tariffs, even if we could get boats on the water and get equipment over here and get goods over here much more quickly, the malaise that has settled in around the chaos and the uncertainty in the economy is going to linger like a hangover, like a bad hangover, for a very long time.